An estimated 500,000 Iraqis have fled the war at home and settled in Jordan. They're considered guests by the government, not refugees, and aren't allowed to work. Tens of thousands of Iraqis have come here for assistance, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. For security reasons, we can't show you the faces of the hundreds of people who come to the UNHCR every day to register. They're given numbers, which are called over the loudspeaker when it's their turn. Imran Riza is the UNHCR representative in Jordan. His job requires a strong dose of diplomacy, whether coordinating with the Jordanian government to allow Iraqis access to medical care, or lobbying the government of other countries to provide asylum for Iraqis. He has plenty of work. I began by asking Imran Riza, could you describe a little bit the mission of UNHCR in Jordan specifically?
The mission of HCR in Jordan is similar as we have anywhere else where you've got a refugee situation, is to provide protection, to provide assistance, to try and find durable solutions. In the Jordanian context, what this means is trying to expand what we call the protection space. Jordan is not signatory to the convention. Jordan does not have asylum legislation. So at a certain level, you would think that there are a lot of problems there. On the other hand, Jordan has had a lot of experience with refugees and refugee flows and has been a very hospitable country over the course of its history. And so what we try and do very much is focus on that practice and both through the Jordanian government try to assist and protect the Iraqis that are here, but also through direct implementation. So we have, in 2008, we had about 22 different implementing partners in our program over here, 4 of whom are government departments, 18 are NGOs, both international and national.
What you're saying basically is that Jordan does not consider the Iraqis here refugees.
Well, they use the term guests to describe them. Refugees in this context of Jordan, given their history, the focus is very much on Palestinians. Looking at any of displacement issues, refugee issues, migration issues, etc. in this context, nothing can be separated out of the history of the Israeli-Palestinian issue and the Palestinian question. And one of the I think worries from the Jordanian perspective is that with a large number of Iraqis here for an indefinite period, is there going to be a Palestinization, in a sense, of their situation? So I think that's one of the concerns that we've had to be quite attuned towards.
How do you address that? Because it's looking increasingly like the UNHCR and the Jordanian government are planning for a longer term stay for the Iraqis.
I don't think I mean, we have to plan for at least a medium-term stay, given the way the situation is in Iraq. Even though that we are having handfuls of people, few hundred people returning every month already. Generally, what we're hearing from the bulk of the Iraqi population here is that they don't feel that it's yet time to return. They don't feel it's sustainable. They don't feel it's secure. They don't know what they'll do. They don't know what's going to happen in terms of property restitution and issues like that. So we need to maintain the space that we have here. We need to be continuing to assist Iraqis who are in a very difficult, I mean, I don't want to underplay how difficult their situation is in Jordan, because they don't have legal status and they don't have legal access to employment, which puts them in a very difficult situation. So how do you deal with that? And with the Jordanian government, you try to certainly help the Jordanian government in the way that we can, also in terms of advocacy, to try and get the international community to recognize the burden that's being put on the hosting countries. And this is something that we've been trying to do over the last 2 years. Encourage bilateral assistance related to the Iraqi weight, the burden of Iraqis here. But it's not just in terms of finances, it's also in terms of resettlement, burden sharing, in terms of taking people that cannot be assisted, that cannot be protected here, that are not going to return anytime soon, to start new lives in other places and share burden that way.
Is that an option for the roughly 500,000 Iraqis who are in Jordan and the 1.5 to 2 who are in Syria? Is it realistic to think that they will all be resettled in third countries?
No, absolutely not. They're not all going to be resettled, nor do most of them, in fact, I think, want to. I don't know if I would use the term most, but many of them certainly don't want to go. Most people want to go home. They want to go home to their own country, which is a wealthy country, which has such an impressive heritage in this region, a place in this region. People are very proud of being Iraqis, and they're proud of their history, and they want to go back to a safe, viable existence in Iraq, and I think that's what most of them want to do. The reason why people are wanting to be resettled is because they're in a situation of desperation right now. They're in limbo. They don't see what their future is, and they're worried about their children and what the future of their children is going to be. So, in that context, there is a demand on resettlement. Many people do want to get resettled, and the demand is much more than the spaces that are actually available, which causes the big challenge for us, of course, which is to try and identify the most vulnerable, the most in need of that durable solution, resettlement, and somehow deal with the frustration of all the others who are not on that track, but are still in limbo and not seeing where their futures are.
And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with knowing that certain people, certain cases probably won't be resettled?
That's something that we're doing around the world all the time. We're dealing with a lot of frustration. We're dealing with situations where people have very high expectations, and you have limited ways of dealing with it. There's no set formula of dealing with it. It puts a lot of stress on our staff. It puts a lot of stress. You see a great deal of frustration and anger amongst our beneficiaries. We try to balance it through assistance. We try to deal with what their problems are here as much as we can. But that if you cannot answer, give them a vision of where they're going to be in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, you can't really deal with the fundamental roots of their frustration.
What I understood from the American embassy is that they look at the UNHCR as an arm of the embassy that will help process and ultimately determine who gets resettled in the U.S. That requires money, that requires staff, and the staff here requires, I believe, 6 months of training to be a caseworker, something like that. How are you handling the burden from all sides, the Iraqis in Jordan, the Jordanian government that's concerned about Palestinians, and the American government that seems to want the UNHCR to do some of its work for it?
Well, I wouldn't say that we're doing the work of the U.S. Embassy in that sense. We are doing resettlement interviews and refugee status determination, etc., as we would do for any country. Why there is this particular link to the US, in a sense, is because the US is the largest resettlement country. So most of our cases that we're submitting do end up going to the US. So more or less out of this year, if we have 10,000 people departing from Jordan, 3/4 of them, 7,500, will go to the US. So that necessarily means that we have quite intensive contact. That because of that large number of persons that will be resettled to the US, the expansion of our program has been very much related to US resettlement. And I mean, we've managed. In 2006, we submitted 530 persons for resettlement. In 2007, we submitted over 8,000. So that was a massive shift, both in terms of personnel, but also systems and how we do it, and we managed to do that. This year, we've gone even more than that. So now we've got mainly the systems in place. We've got enough of a critical mass of skilled professionals doing this very labor-intensive work, a lot of interviewing, a lot of preparing of forms, a lot of preparing of argumentation, that new people coming on board, it's relatively easy to train them and get them, and even if there's turnover, it's all right.
How do you navigate the Jordanian side of things? Jordan has said publicly they will not accept a single Iraqi as a permanent Jordanian citizen. How do you keep relations good with the Jordanians?
By trying to understand what their constraints are, by understanding the impact on the country, by being clear about what our mission is and our need to protect and assist these people, and trying to find common ground in all of that. We have, I'm happy that we have extremely good relations with the Jordanian government. And over the course of this last while, public education has opened up in a much bigger way. That needs support. Health, access to public health facilities has also increased. Two projects that I'm very happy about this over the course of 2008 that we added in terms of our work with the Jordanian government. One has to do with the Family Protection Department, which is in the Public Security Directorate, which is within the security apparatus, but dealing with very difficult family protection issues. And by availing Iraqis of the Jordanian protection mechanisms in that is the best way that we can deal with that. Similarly, we now have access to the shelter that's used for similar survivors of sexual and gender-based violence that rests with the Ministry of Social Development, so we have an agreement with them. These sorts of things, there's a lot of progress on. No, the Jordanians are not going to give nationality or local settlement possibilities to Iraqis. And I guess we just have to understand that and work on not really, and we don't consider that one of the durable solutions that can apply in this situation for Iraqis in Jordan. It's resettlement, it's voluntary repatriation. In the meantime, we have a temporary situation that we're trying to expand the protection and assistance aspects of it as much as possible.
How long do you foresee this going on? Obviously, we can't tell the future, but it has been more than 5 years since the war began. It seems like it is temporary, but at the same time, the Iraqis aren't really moving. There's some turnover, some people are leaving, a few are going home, but the bulk of Iraqis are still here and probably won't be leaving anytime soon.
I mean, we're planning for 2009. We have done all our planning for 2009. It's very much along the lines of what we've been doing this year. As I mentioned before, I think in this, in the next 6 months, a year, probably we'll see some repatriation, more or less at the same level that we're seeing right now. But unless something dramatically changes in terms of the security situation within Iraq and the whatever the indicators that Iraqis are looking at to assess the sustainability of going back, the viability of that. I think we will continue certainly through 2009 more or less as we are. Going beyond that, I really don't, I mean, all of us are hoping that there is going to be that change. And certainly, I mean, we see that security in many areas has improved over this period, but that it again goes back to sustainability. One of the things that we've been trying to encourage the Iraqi government to do quite a bit is to make the necessary preparations for return, first with internally displaced persons, also for refugees, but to build up their linkages also with their citizens that are abroad, that are refugees, that are displaced, and see what can be done in terms of already working with them here to facilitate eventual return.
Do you feel the United States is doing its part for the UNHCR?
In terms of UNHCR, I mean, the US remains our largest donor, and they've been very instrumental in ensuring that the assistance operations that we have built up over here are actually being implemented, operating, etc., i.e. they're financing it. And as I mentioned before, they are our largest resettlement country, also from the region.